You've been taught your whole life to be good, kind, polite, understanding, forgiving, and it sounds noble. It feels virtuous. But deep down, something doesn't add up, because the more good you are, the more you get overlooked, disrespected, taken advantage of. The world says, be good and good things will come. But Machiavelli saw through that lie. It is much safer to be feared than to be loved, if one must choose. This video isn't about becoming cruel. It's about understanding how goodness without strength becomes a trap. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't respect kindness. They exploit it. You say yes too much. You avoid conflict. You give the benefit of the doubt. You stay silent to keep the peace. And people learn that you're the one who can be pushed. Men are quick to offend one who is loved rather than one who is feared. It's not because you're bad. It's because your goodness isn't backed by strength. And in a world that runs on power, goodness without boundaries is weakness in disguise. Society loves good people because they're easy to manage. They'll follow the rules. They won't question authority. They'll feel guilty when they push back. And so morality becomes a tool, not to uplift you, but to control you. You were praised for being quiet, for sacrificing, for being selfless. But what if that praise was just social conditioning to make you obedient? The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. They want you compliant, not powerful. You think if you're kind, you'll be loved. If you're fair, people will be fair back. If you're patient, others will meet you halfway. But that's not how it works. People don't treat you how you deserve. They treat you based on what you allow. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Being liked is fragile. It depends on agreement, image, performance. But being respected, that lasts. And you can't be respected if you're afraid to say no. At first, your kindness feels like strength. You say, I'm just understanding. I'm just loyal. But soon, you're drained. You're bitter. You're invisible. Why? Because you gave too much to people who never earned it. You stayed too long in places that didn't see you. You kept giving because you were too afraid to stop. That's not goodness. That's self-abandonment. And no one is coming to rescue you from it. Most people hear Machiavellian and think manipulative, ruthless, immoral, but they miss the point. Machiavelli wasn't teaching cruelty. He was exposing how the world really works. He saw that leaders who were too nice got overthrown, that good intentions didn't stop betrayal, that power, not purity, determined outcomes. A prince who is always good will come to ruin among so many who are not good. He didn't say, be cruel. He said, don't be naive. And that's a lesson good people need the most. You've met them. People who preach kindness, then gossip behind your back. People who smile, then manipulate. People who say they love peace, but can't tolerate disagreement. This is performative virtue, goodness as theater, and Machiavelli warned against it. It is not necessary to have all the good qualities, but it is necessary to appear to have them. He wasn't glorifying deception. He was warning you. Don't mistake appearance for essence. Real power comes from strategy, not self-righteousness. From self-awareness, not blind compliance. When you live to be good, you start making decisions based on guilt, not truth. You say yes when you mean no. You help people who would never help you. You keep giving until you're empty and still feel like it's not enough. Why? Because you've confused goodness with martyrdom, with being small, silent, self-erasing. The ends justify the means. Not as cold as it sounds. It means judge by outcomes, not appearances. If your goodness keeps harming you, it's not goodness anymore. It's self-destruction disguised as morality. Here's the shift. You don't have to become cold or cruel, but you do need to become clear. Clear on your limits, clear on your standards, clear on who gets access to your energy. Power isn't about dominating others. It's about not being dominated by your own fear of conflict. Men in general judge more from appearances than from reality. Being powerful means you can be kind without being a doormat. You can be forgiving without being blind. You can be patient without being passive. This isn't about being less good. It's about being less easy to use. Being good without boundaries is like giving away water from an empty well. Eventually, there's nothing left, not even for you. You cannot love others while abandoning yourself. He who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived. If your kindness always costs you your peace, your energy, your dignity, it's not kindness anymore. It's a transaction you're not even aware you're making. And the more you give without discernment, the more the wrong people take without gratitude. Boundaries don't make you less good. They make your goodness sustainable. You've been conditioned to think, I must always do the right thing. I must never offend. I must always be available. But who decided what the right thing is? And why does it always seem to benefit others at your expense? The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world is composed of the vulgar. This obsession with being perfectly moral often creates people who are emotionally dishonest, passive-aggressive, and deeply resentful, because no one can be endlessly selfless without eventually snapping. Real goodness includes saying no, leaving when needed, choosing your well-being over someone else's comfort. There's a middle path, one that doesn't require you to become heartless, but also refuses to let you stay helpless. That path is strategy. It's learning when to speak and when to be silent, when to give and when to withdraw, when to help and when to let someone fail. A prudent man should always follow in the path trodden by great men and imitate those who are most excellent. Kindness becomes dangerous when it's not paired with wisdom. You're not just a giver, you're a chooser, and your energy is not free. It's earned, it's sacred, and not everyone deserves it. Without discipline, your heart gets hijacked. You stay in relationships out of guilt. You forgive without accountability. You absorb others' pain as your responsibility. And worst of all, you stop trusting yourself. Because every time you betray your boundaries, a piece of your self-respect dies. There is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed to the advantage of others. Avoiding conflict doesn't bring peace. It just delays the explosion. Discipline isn't about control. It's about having the courage to protect your values before they get twisted against you. One of the most dangerous beliefs you've inherited is this: good people follow the rules. But whose rules? Who benefits from your obedience? Who profits from your silence? Who gains when you never say no? A wise man ought always to follow the paths beaten by great men and to imitate those who have been supreme. You don't need to be rebellious for the sake of it, but you do need to think for yourself. Goodness isn't obedience, it's discernment. It's knowing which rules serve justice and which just keep you small. You've been guilt-tripped into weakness. Every time you chose yourself, they said you were selfish. Every time you drew a line, they said you were unkind. Every time you stood up for yourself, they said you were difficult. But what they really meant was, you're no longer easy to control. You can be good and still demand respect. You can be kind and still walk away. You can be loving and still be powerful. You don't owe your softness to those who exploit it. There's the real you. And then there's the image you've worked so hard to maintain. The agreeable one. The healer. The one who's always fine. But maintaining that image is exhausting. And for what? So you can be accepted by people who don't even see you. A prince must learn how not to be good, and to use this knowledge or not use it according to necessity. Sometimes, protecting your truth means destroying your image. Sometimes healing requires disappointing people. And sometimes goodness means walking away without explaining yourself. You were not born to be everyone's emotional crutch, their therapist, their backup plan, their punching bag in disguise. You were born to be whole, to walk through the world with clarity, with fire, with wisdom, and the kind of goodness that arises from power, not fear. There is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. That new order begins with you. You don't have to destroy your goodness. You just have to root it in strength. The most dangerous kind of goodness is the one you don't choose. The kind that's expected, extracted, guilted out of you. But when you reclaim your right to choose, your goodness becomes powerful. It becomes a gift, not a weakness. A strength, not a sentence. A decision, not a default. And the moment you choose your truth over your image, your values over your fear, your boundaries over people-pleasing, you become free. You don't need to prove that you're good. You don't need to earn love by sacrificing yourself. You don't need to bleed to be seen. The people who want you to do that aren't looking for a friend. They're looking for a tool. You are not a utility. It is better to act and repent than not to act and regret. There is a power in stillness, in saying no, in choosing rest, in withdrawing your energy from people and places that only know how to consume it. You don't have to give all of yourself to be worthy of connection. It's time to rewrite the definition. Goodness is not being silent when something feels wrong, agreeing to keep the peace, letting others cross your boundaries. Goodness is truthfulness even when it's hard, strength even when it's misunderstood, compassion without self-sacrifice. This is what Machiavelli meant, not to destroy virtue but to make it sovereign. Because a good person who is wise, strategic, and self-possessed is unstoppable. Your goodness was never meant to be measured by how much it benefits other people, but that's what the world rewards. Goodness that keeps others comfortable, goodness that doesn't ask questions, goodness that never threatens the system. You are trained to believe that a good person is always soft, silent, agreeable. But Machiavelli would ask, good for whom? For those in power, for those who want your compliance, for those who benefit from your silence. You're not here to be good on someone else's terms. You are here to live in alignment with your truth, even if it makes others uncomfortable, because that's the only kind of goodness that liberates. Sometimes, the voice keeping you small isn't outside you, it's inside. And it doesn't scream, it whispers, you should be nicer, you're being selfish, don't make things harder than they need to be. This voice sounds like conscience, but it's really fear. Fear of rejection, fear of disapproval, fear of no longer being the good one. Machiavelli didn't just warn about enemies, he warned about illusions. And the most dangerous illusion is the one you never question, because it wears the mask of virtue. You don't silence that voice with cruelty, you silence it with clarity, by asking, is this voice guiding me or guilting me? Not all power is loud. Sometimes power is a simple refusal. A refusal to explain yourself, to soften your tone, to agree when your body says no. You don't need to attack. You don't need to convince. You don't need to raise your voice. You simply stop complying with things that make you shrink. This is the strategy Machiavelli valued. Not arrogance, but awareness. Not domination, but decision. You are no longer trying to be seen as good. You are now being good by refusing to betray your values for applause. That kind of quiet resistance, it's unshakable. There's a version of goodness that bends and breaks under pressure, and there's a version that builds something new. The goodness that changes the world doesn't come from pleasing. It comes from presence, from courage, from clarity without cruelty. This is the kind of goodness Machiavelli didn't write off. He respected it when it walked hand in hand with power. Because when good people stop apologizing, stop explaining, and start acting from inner authority, they stop being used, and they start becoming forces of actual change. Let that be you. When goodness becomes your identity, you stop questioning where it's leading you. You forgive when you should protect. You stay silent when you should speak. You stay loyal to people who've long stopped deserving it, not because you're weak, but because your goodness has become a performance you don't know how to stop. Machiavelli would call this not virtue, but blindness, because even morality, when applied without thought, can become a form of self-betrayal. Sometimes the kindest people are also the most controlling, not with force, but with subtle pressure, with guilt, with should, with expectations masked as concern. You've likely done this yourself, helped someone not because they asked, but because it made you feel necessary, forgiven someone not out of strength, but because you were afraid of your own anger. This isn't evil, it's just unconscious. But as Machiavelli knew, what's unconscious can still be dangerous. And the only way to avoid becoming a manipulator in disguise is to question the real reason you want to be good. There's a kind of moral superiority that feels safe, but leaves you stuck. You think, if I keep doing the right thing, life will eventually reward me. But Machiavelli would challenge that. Because the world doesn't always reward goodness. Sometimes it exploits it. This isn't a reason to become cruel. It's a reason to become conscious. To stop using goodness as a shield from reality. To stop expecting life to be fair just because you are. And to begin trusting your own discernment more than anyone's rules. You don't have to tell people you're good. You don't have to prove your intentions. You don't have to keep explaining your heart. Real goodness speaks without shouting. It moves without needing to be recognized. It knows when to stay soft and when to stand up. It honors peace, but is not afraid of tension. Machiavelli might not have called this goodness, but he would have called it strategy with a soul. That's what we're building. Not the illusion of virtue, but the reality of integrity. Here is the last thing most good people forget. Your goodness means nothing if it doesn't include you. You can't keep giving while slowly disappearing. You can't keep saying yes when everything inside you says no. You can't keep being the light in places that only feed on your glow. The most radical act of goodness may be this: to stop betraying yourself just to be loved. Because once you include yourself in your own compassion, you stop being used in the name of being good, and you start being whole. You don't need to be cruel to survive, but you do need to be clear. You don't need to manipulate, but you must know how manipulation works. You don't need to control, but you must no longer be controlled. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. Stop trying to be endlessly good. Start becoming whole, and your goodness will stop being a curse and start becoming a force. If this message stirred something in you, a fire you've been suppressing, a truth you've been avoiding, a power you've been hiding, you're not alone. Leave a comment below. I choose power over performance. Let others know you're done being used in the name of being good. And if you're walking this path of power, clarity, and sovereign goodness, subscribe. You're not here to be liked. You're here to become someone who no longer betrays themselves. Until next time, keep shining, not to be seen, but to see.